Well, good afternoon and welcome to the homestead. My name is Jonathan. Thank you so much for tuning in for this fourth episode of Porch Talk. It is kind of a dreary day outside and cold and windy, and I'm just getting over an ear infection. So Porch Talk is turning into a fireside chat today. So apologize for any inconvenience. The sheep are good. They're pretty happy. We got gutters on the barn, and it's going to be a lot drier around there. We've had a little bit of a muddy mess, so they're fine. I'll tell them that you said hi. I have a special guest with us today. This is Willow. Willow has always wanted to be on the camera, but I never let her, and so now she gets to be on today. So you've met one of the fam, and yeah, obviously we're big dog lovers. And now she's disinterested, but she was very excited to meet you guys. So if you're not a dog person, then there's just really no explanation for why we are all the way we are. If I figure out why we're all so nuts, I will let you know. I want to begin this afternoon by asking you a question. What if I were to tell you, what if I were to know the future, for one, which I don't, but what if I were? And what if I were to tell you that a month from now, or 3 months from now, or 6 months from now, you are going to lose your job, or you are going to be diagnosed with cancer and have 9 months to live, or this economic downturn was going to turn into a severe Great Depression, like in the 1930s or in the 1860s, 70s. Or what if I were to tell you that there was the Cold War that we're currently in with the Russian Federation was going to turn into a hot war, and there's going to be a nuclear holocaust? Would you just continue on your life like always? Or would all of a sudden the urgency of knowing that those difficulties were coming, would that spur you into action? That you would begin to do things differently than you are doing now? So perhaps depending on which tragedy was going to strike, you might be more thoughtful with how you're spending your money or how you're investing, or you might take time to invest in relationships that you're neglecting right now. Or you might take time to gather up some supplies so that you'll have things that won't be available for purchase down the road. What things would change about your life to where you would recognize the danger and begin to respond to it? Well, the Bible says that there will always be wars and rumors of wars. There will always be calamities and loss that will come upon us suddenly, and that oftentimes we won't have time to prepare, time to make things right in our lives, time to respond. And I hope that thought process doesn't get you upset or depressed or frustrated. That's not at all my intention today. But it is my intention to get us thinking, because we're going to be doing a preparedness checkup today, among other things. We're going to be looking in the book of Genesis to see how God prepares his people for certain difficulties and calamities. And my challenge is to perhaps, no pun intended, light a fire under your behind today to get some priorities straightened out in your life. If you're just kind of ho-humming along and you're just assuming upon or presuming upon God that everything's going to continue to be well in certain areas of your life, and you are not making appropriate preparations, then I would hope to encourage you. Now, at the same time, for some of you who are kind of quick to maybe you're a little over-prepared, you're a little quick to respond, then I don't want to set you off into a frenzy. But we just want to have a balanced and appropriate and peaceful opportunity. I'm going to straighten the camera up a little bit here. I think it's just a little off. And I don't have OCD, but I'm definitely on the spectrum a little bit. So hopefully that's better. But to begin to think about what it would look like in your life and how you would change, what changes you would make. And so let's begin today by looking at Genesis chapter 41, verses 33. If you take just a moment and be willing to turn with me, we're going to read that together. Now, at this point in the story, if you're familiar with the story of Joseph, he's become very favorable towards the Egyptians, and Pharaoh has put him second in command over all the kingdom. And Pharaoh has a dream, and Joseph interprets the dream. And in the dream, there are going to be calamity come upon the land. And the Lord reveals to Joseph through Pharaoh's dream how to prepare for that calamity. Let's read it together. So now let Pharaoh look for a discerning and wise man and set him over the land of Egypt. Let Pharaoh do this, and let him appoint overseers over the land, and take a fifth of the harvest of the land of Egypt during the 7 years of abundance. And let them gather all the excess food during these good years that are coming. Under Pharaoh's authority, store the grain in the cities so they may preserve it as food. The food will be a reserve for the land during the 7 years of famine that will take place in the land of Egypt. Then the country will not be wiped out by the famine. Their proposal pleased Pharaoh and all his servants. And then Pharaoh said to his servants, "Can we find anyone like this, a man who has God's Spirit in him?" So Pharaoh said to Joseph, "Since God has made all this known to you, there is no one as intelligent and wise as you are. You will be over my house, and all my people will obey your commands. Only with regard to the throne will I be greater than you." Pharaoh also said to Joseph, "See, I am placing you over all the land of Egypt." Pharaoh removed his signet ring from his hand, and he put it in Joseph's hand, clothed him with fine linen garments, and placed a gold chain around his neck. He had Joseph ride in his second chariot, and servants call out before him, "Abrek!" And so he placed him over all the land of Egypt, which means commander or someone in charge. Pharaoh said to Joseph, "I am Pharaoh, but no one will be able to raise his hand or foot in all the land of Egypt without your permission." And he gave Joseph the name Zephanath-Paneah, and gave him a wife, Asenath, daughter of Potiphera, priest at On. And Joseph went throughout the land of Egypt. So what we find out is that God reveals to Pharaoh that a famine is coming. There will be 7 years of plenty, and there will be 7 years of famine. And that during that time of plenty, that they are to prepare. And so I think the Bible gives us a very clear directive, not ambiguous, not, oh, well, this is a one-off story obscurely in the Old Testament, but a major, major theme to help us understand how we are to live. And each of us has a kingdom. If you think about it, really, we might not have lords and vassals and servants underneath us, and we might not command great amounts of land or herds, but whatever you have, however small, even if it's just you and your old broken down vehicle, that's your kingdom, the things that the Lord has given possession to you. And so each of us has a responsibility to use the resources in that kingdom wisely. And today I want you to have a time of assessment and ask the question, are you using your resources wisely? Or are you just frivolously living in comfort, spending whatever you feel like, not preparing for the future so that when calamity strikes, your kingdom will fall? And that's what we're going to be taking a look at today. And so as we consider that question, I want to take just a moment to go through kind of what I call the 3 stages of preparation. And these can apply very widely to different things in our life. You know, they can apply to finances, they can apply to provisions, they can apply to the education and skills that we have, really more importantly, the skills, because the nuclear bomb or the tornado or the cancer doesn't really care about how many degrees you have. It cares about the skills that you have. And so I'm not knocking on education at all. Obviously, I have a billion years of education. In fact, Izzy and I were talking last night on the way home. She said, "Dad, how long did you go to school?" I didn't think about that. And I said, "Well, until I was about 33. She says, "Wow, Dad, that's a long time. How did you do that?" And I began to try to figure out how I did do that, and I'm not really sure. But so I'm not knocking education, but at the end of the day, how you apply that knowledge and convert it into wisdom along with experience, that is what counts at the end of the day. And so the first of the 3 phases of preparations, the first phase is the basic phase. And so this I would say is, probably the starting point. If you try to take everything on at once, it becomes very overwhelming. And there's also a learning curve. It takes years to develop skills that would help you survive and thrive a major calamity, either personally in your life or on a larger macro global scale. And so in those basics, the very, very absolute basic, most important thing that everyone who is listening to my voice should have, without exception, is an emergency fund. You should have enough money to sustain a significant emergency, whether it's appliances breaking down, car breaking down, or a complete loss of car, losing a job, and you ought to have those reserves in place. And if you don't have that, really the initial challenge for you is that you just need to pretty much stop everything you're doing, stop all the spending, all of the consumption in your life, and you need to begin to build that up. And there's a million excuses why we can't do that. I need to pay off debt. My child needs this. I like getting my nails done. I like eating at Olive Garden. I get all those things. And I like to I don't like to really get my nails done, but I do like to eat at Olive Garden. And so I get that is a sacrifice. And it's even more complicated if you're a mom or a dad and you have a family and they all want to do stuff and you're kind of the bad guy, the bad cop who's saying, no, we can't spend this right now, and but I promise you will be providing for them a much more fruitful life in the long run if you will make the tough decision and just cut out the fat for a season to get things lined up. Now, the question that everybody wants to know is, well, how much do I need for an emergency fund? And back in the old days, for a young family starting out when minimum wage was $4.25, $1,000 would pretty much save you from major car repair bill, loss of job for a while, things like that. It could get you quite a ways down the road without having to go into debt or, go to have extraordinary measures in order to survive. Those days, that ship sailed a long time ago, and we are now in a very challenging economic situation where the dollar has just absolutely taken the plunge and really has lost the majority of its buying power. And that will, as the Federal Reserve continues to print money endlessly and buy bonds and do all kinds of crazy manipulations with the currency, I foresee, even though I don't have the gift of knowing the future, I foresee with a very high probability that the dollar will continue its massive decline that began in the 1970s. And so we will continue that, and it will continue to lose its value. And so I recommend, really more than saving up money, to save up provisions, food, and in fact, we call it the 3 B's in the preparedness world: beans, bullets, and Band-Aids. So bean represents food and other food-like things and ability to store food long term. You may want to invest in what's it called? When you take the moisture out of food and package it, I'll think of it, it's dehumidifier, something. Hopefully I'll think what it's called. But just ways to, if you have vacuum packing or canning, learning to can, all those things cost very little money, and you can produce a lot of food and save it up. Or you can, if you have lots of money sitting around and you don't want to take the time to learn all those skills, which I highly recommend, you can also just buy big food buckets and stick it in your pantry somewhere and bury it in the ground or do something to have it later on. All right, so that's the beans. Bullets, that means just a way to protect yourself. So, security system, a way to protect your home if law enforcement becomes overwhelmed or not existent, and, appropriate munitions and more importantly, skills to protect yourself. It doesn't do you a lot of good to have an arsenal of weapons if you don't have training to deploy them, because you may end up shooting yourself in the foot, again, no pun intended, without the proper training. So, get somebody. I'd be glad to help someone on our security team at church. They can kind of help you. We've got a guy, John Wade. He owns a business and sells those things. You can get a great deal on some stuff that you might need. And so that's, the way to protect yourself. And then lastly, Band-Aids, you need medical training first. It's not hard at all to go get a certification in first aid and CPR, or just get a good book or learn some skills on the internet. Find a nurse, find somebody that can help you learn, and then gather some supplies that would help you be able to weather a storm, the type of storm where perhaps hospital services are not available or the ambulance cannot get to you. Like in an ice storm like we had in 2007, where power was out for weeks and ambulances couldn't get through the roads because all of the downed trees and power lines, and you just had to kind of fend for yourself, protect yourself, treat yourself for injuries, feed yourself. Those things just tend to become a big need when those services are not available. All right, so that's really the basics. And if you pressed me for a number, I would try to have at least 3 months of your salary or your living expenses. Plus, I would have probably about, it sounds crazy, but $5,000 in a fund in dollars or Bitcoin that you could deploy immediately if you had in an emergency. And that's not a preparation you come up with overnight. It's going to take some time and dedication and diligence to get to that place. But I promise, I can almost guarantee you that a calamity will happen at some point in your life, and you will be so glad that you made that provision and made that preparation. All right, moving on to the intermediate phase. So once you get, and please do not go on to the intermediate phase till you get the basics. The basics are absolutely important. That is the foundation that you will build upon. So don't do other crazy stuff. Don't start spending. So for example, what do people do? Like, they go out and buy generators, for example, and spend thousands of dollars, and they have no emergency fund, or their credit card debt is crushing them. Well, the generator is not going to help you much if you can't buy gas to put in it, or can't buy solar panels to charge up your batteries and things. So just make sure that you can't just skip the beginning and go to the end. And buy the fun toys, which lots of people are happy to sell you. You just need to, sorry, I think someone was trying to call there. You just need to stick with the basics, get those down, get those preparations made, and move on. Dogs, you guys are driving me nuts. Quit fighting, quit goofing around. Yeah, see ya. Okay, yeah, that's right. Gotcha. Intermediate step. Now, once you have those basic things, you've got your emergency fund, you've got some supplies, you've got some skills, you need to go to the next level, which is to increase the length of those provisions. So continue on with that basic step, increase your emergency fund, increase your preparations, increase your security, increase your skills, but also you need to begin to transition to a self-sustaining lifestyle. Okay, so for example, before we began, before I heard a message like this, and my eyes were kind of open to the need to have preparedness in my life, I would say I was, your typical victim of the nanny state, to where I was relying on Walmart, or of course they didn't have Amazon back then, but I was just relying on stores, all kinds of stores, to do everything for me. I couldn't build my own furniture. I couldn't grow my own food. I couldn't, figure out how to handle different situations without calling somebody. I didn't have skills to repair my house or repair my vehicles. I was a complete, and that's why they call it the nanny state. That you're just dependent on everyone around you and the culture around you to do anything. And I don't know. You have to be careful on YouTube, because either the algorithm will get you or the trolls will get you. But the truth is, guys, that's kind of pathetic. And there's really no excuse for that. And so we need to come to a place of repentance in that regard. And we need to begin to be able to do things for ourselves. Not only does that not keep us, does it keep us from falling victim to being a part of the nanny state, but it puts us in a place to help other people to be able to get out of that condition as well. And I mean, you could be a multimillionaire and still be a victim of the nanny state when that situation happens. Puppies, let's go outside. Pardon me just a moment. You guys are out of control. Come on, let's go outside. There you go. Okay, well, hopefully the audio stream was blocking out all the commotion in the background, but dogs were getting wild, so they are now out in the wild at this moment. So that's what happens in the intermediate stage. You can expand on the basics, and then you begin to, learn. So what would it look like for some of the things in the intermediate stage? So maybe you, instead of going to the furniture store when it's time to buy furniture, you get a few good tools and you learn to make that furniture for yourself, for your kids, for your family. Maybe instead of you just going to Walmart or going to Aldi or Hy-Vee or whatever store you shop at, Price Cutter, you grow some of your own food. Maybe you just start with just 10%. Maybe you just grow 10% of your food and begin to expand that. Maybe you get to a place where you can reload your ammo instead of just purchase fresh ammo off the shelf. Maybe you get to the place where you can make your own candles instead of buy them, or you can produce some of your own power. Maybe you start with a small solar system, or have a little bit of a generator, gas, or propane backup in case that there's a power outage. And just begin to learn those really important skills. Maybe you learn to sew up your own lacerations, and that way whenever you get injured, instead of going to the hospital, maybe you just kind of sew that up yourself, but you have the mindset to prevent infection and to do it properly so it doesn't leave a big scar. Just begin to learn some of those things. I remember I sliced my hand open with an axe several years ago, and of course my first thought was, I need to go to the hospital. But I'd been working on my medical skills a little bit, and had some opportunities with the animals to work, be my own veterinarian, and so I just kind of patched that thing up, sewed that thing up, and it's there's a tiny bit of a scar there you can maybe see, but it's not bad. So, if it's on your face or somewhere like that, you probably definitely want to go get professional help. I did split my eye open a few years ago playing Romans and Christians in the dark with the kids, and so I did have a professional do that. So please, always seek a professional advice. I'm not, giving medical advice. I'm just trying to suggest that for minor things, maybe you just don't, have to go to the doctor for every little thing, but you learn how to treat and handle some things for yourself. So that's not a vote for natural medicine, not natural medicine, hospitals. I'm not getting into that whole thing at all. Just kind of saying, learn some medical stuff. So when you get to, or get past the intermediate stage and you're moving on to the advanced stage, you begin to get into the off-grid, self-sustaining kind of a person, which I think ultimately is the goal. That if you could, and this is something that is maybe, it's not outside the possibility, but for many, it is a path and a journey that is so long and time consuming that few will find it. The wide is the gate and wide is the road to destruction, but narrow is the road that leads to life. That certainly not only applies to our salvation, through our response to the gospel message and the repentance of our sin, but it is also true to being a self-sufficient individual. That it is very difficult to achieve that, and you will probably need to relocate to a place where you have enough land to be self-sufficient, and you're going to need some kind of alternative energy generation, whether it's a little stream or creek on your property, or solar panels or wind turbines, or some way to produce power. You need to get a septic system. You need to get, dig a well and power that well with off-grid power. There's a lot to that, and so that it's not something that you just want to go out and do right off the bat. You get inspired, and your eyes are open to the truth, and you're like, oh man, we're going full Wrangler Star. Shout out to Wrangler Star, one of my favorite YouTubers. I'm actually going to talk about that in a little bit. I'm going to answer a question as we close today for those who make it to the end. What are my favorite YouTube channels that I watch? I get that question a lot, so I'm going to share that information today. So for anyone that cares, you can wait for that. It's coming. So let's go back to let's continue in on our stories. We want to glean as much information as we can, and what we want to really look at is what was the result. We knew about God's prophecy there would be 7 years of plenty, 7 years of famine. So was Joseph and the Egyptian people faithful? And did that faithfulness in provision bear fruit? Because you have to remember, that means if they were saving up 7 years of food, they were eating less during that 7 years of plenty. They were working harder. That they were participating in what I like to call delayed gratification. Instead of getting it all now, they were saving some for a rainy day. And that was truly wise. And many of us struggle to have that wisdom in our lives right now. And that's really the challenge of this message today. So let's take a look. Let's see how it turned out. We're going to fast forward to Genesis chapter 47, verse 13. So let's take a look at that together, if you would. So, Joseph goes through reconnecting with his family, which is an awesome story. And the 7 years of plenty end and the 7 years of famine come, and they are in the midst of that. And there is a consequence that goes beyond just having enough, just the Egyptians having enough during that time. Something pivotal and powerful happens to the nation of Egypt as a result of their provisions. So in verse 13 it says, "There was no food in the entire region, for the famine was very severe. And the land of Egypt and the land of Canaan were exhausted by the famine. Joseph collected all the money to be found in the land of Egypt and the land of Canaan in exchange for the grain they were purchasing. He brought the money to Pharaoh's palace. And when the money from the land of Egypt and the land of Canaan was gone, all the Egyptians came to Joseph and said, 'Give us food. Why should we die here in front of you? The money is gone.' But Joseph said, 'Give me your livestock, since the money is gone, and I will give you food in exchange for the livestock.' So they brought their livestock to Joseph, and he gave them food in exchange for the horses, the herds of sheep, the herds of cattle, and the donkeys. That year he provided them with food in exchange for their livestock. And when the year was over, they came to the next year and said, 'We cannot hide from our Lord that the money is gone, and our livestock belongs to you. There is nothing left for our land except our bodies and what we're standing on. Why should we die here in front of you, both of us and our land? Buy us and our land in exchange for food. Then we, with our land, will become Pharaoh's slaves. Give us seed so that we can live and not die, and so that the land won't become desolate.' In this way, Joseph acquired all the land in Egypt for Pharaoh, because every Egyptian sold his field, since the famine was so severe for them. And the land became Pharaoh's, and Joseph moved the people to the cities from one end of Egypt to the other. The only land he didn't acquire was the priest's portion, for it was given to them by Pharaoh. They lived off the rations Pharaoh had given them. Therefore, they did not sell their land. Then Joseph said to the people, 'Understand today that I have acquired you and your land for Pharaoh. Here is seed for you. Sow it in the land at harvest. You are to give a fifth of it to Pharaoh, and 4/5 will be yours as seed for the fields and as food for yourselves, your households, and your dependents.' And they said, 'You have saved our lives. We have found favor in our Lord's eyes and will be Pharaoh's slaves.' So Joseph made it a law, still in effect today in the land of Egypt, that a fifth of the produce belongs to Pharaoh. Only the priest's land does not." So what's absolutely horrifyingly amazing is that through that situation, those who were prepared became not only owners of the livestock, owners of the land, but they actually owned the people as slaves, because those who foolishly failed to prepare became slaves to those in charge. Sound familiar at all in the year 2023? And so what's really important is that if we want to exit our slavery to the system, then the way to do that is through our own perseverance and through our own faithful living, and to begin living according to God's ways and to reject the ways of the world. I hope that story really, it really impresses upon my heart that it's not just a suggestion. It's not just oh, this would be nice if we did this. It is a clear command from the Lord with clear consequences for what will happen in our lives if we fail to be obedient to live our life God's way. So let's ponder that. Let's consider that as we continue our discussion today, and let's be faithful to think about what that looks like specifically in our lives. To not just kind of walk away like, oh, that was such a moving message, and yeah, I ought to do something, and then we just kind of go on and just keep living how we're living. But hopefully today, that will be kind of a wake-up call, kind of a, oh man, I've kind of been missing it. I didn't realize, that God had a plan for me and for my family, and how we were to, survive the famine that's coming. But God has laid that out for us clearly, and He has given us clear directive. And so my hope is that each of us would respond to His word faithfully today through repentance, to stop doing what we're doing now, and to move forward in a life of faithfulness and a life of good stewardship, a life of production rather than being a consumer that just consumes and is lazy and is not producing the fruit that God would have us to produce in our lives. So I'm going to answer at this moment what my favorite YouTubers and YouTube channels are, the ones that help me out a lot. A recent Google survey showed that for the first time ever, that the means of the transfer of education is now no longer in the educational system, but it is in other outlets such as YouTube. YouTube being the largest information imparting outlet. I mean, the internet in general being the largest, but then of those, YouTube being the largest amount of information sharing. And so it is the place we go to learn. And of course, just like any other type of education, you have to discern what is true and what is false. That it by no means is everything, and by no means is everything that's said on these, my favorite YouTuber channels, going to be 100% accurate. There is a lot of subjectivity. There are some things that are false. And so you do have to be discerning and thoughtful and careful. And by no means is this River Bluff Fellowship wholly endorsing, these channels. But as I look back, I think most all of these are definitely all of these are channels I've watched for years, and I've come to respect some of the information value that is shared there. So first one, we'll start off with Wrangler Star, since I mentioned him before. Wrangler Star is a great channel, been in existence over 10 years, which is very long in the YouTube world. It's about a man and his family who are evangelical believers. He actually grew up Mormon and then became a believer later on in life, and they have developed a homestead out in the Northwest, and he just shares kind of their adventures and struggles and triumphs and skills that he has learned. He passes that information on, and he reviews different products and things to kind of help us learn and shorten our journey. And he has a lot of great Bible studies, a lot of great just words of wisdom for men and for women and for families who are on that homesteading path and not. He also there's at least one book out, and I own that book. It's called Modern Homesteading, and it continues that story, and again also shares practical information. Especially what I would say is, for those of you who are really looking at transitioning from the basic to the intermediate, that's where most people have the hardest time, because it is very skill intensive, and it is very knowledge and understanding intensive. Anybody can go out to Walmart and go to the camping section and buy flashlights, or just buy food buckets off Amazon. I mean, just about anybody can do that has the money available to do it. But it's a whole other thing to begin to be self-sufficient. And so if you're interested in that, just a lot of great information. I'm sure there are hundreds, maybe even thousands of videos at this point, at least hundreds on there. And you will probably, I would highly encourage you, go back to 2012 or 2011, go back, or 2010, whenever you started, go back there, start there, because that's going to help you do a lot better at the beginning of your journey. A lot of the newer content is more Bible study oriented, or just kind of hang out with Cody oriented, or just philosophy of the homesteading life. A lot of the skills, he's kind of done like every skill out there. How to make your own firewood, grow a garden, have an orchard, take care of your tools, so on and so forth. So, that will be helpful to you to go back to the beginning. Next, in terms of spiritual growth, obviously, the River Bluff Fellowship YouTube channel. So much great content. Pastor Scott, great messages every single Sunday. You can view those on our YouTube channel. Porch Talks, going back several seasons. You might have to go to our Facebook page to see some of the earlier, what we used to call it, PLG, our Preparedness Life Group, videos and things. A lot of those were not recorded, but we did record some of those. Some of that information is good. And so you can check that information out. There's tons of great content. I am a big Charles Stanley person. I really like his teaching and preaching, and it's just it goes back to the basics, and it's very, at the heart of what we believe is Southern Baptist. And so I like that a lot. And his YouTube channel is called In Touch Ministries. There's a lot of knockoffs and video robbing going on because he's such a big name, but just subscribe to In Touch for Living or In Touch Ministries, and you're going to get great continued discipleship for those of you looking for a daily sermon or a daily message devotion. Really, really good. For those of you who are a little bit more on you kind of need to get on the accelerated plan, and maybe you're struggling, you're wavering a little bit with your motivation, so you're kind of needing some motivational, kind of punch you in the face and get you going messages. I recommend Viking Preparedness with Pastor Joe Fox. He lives not far from here in the Ozarks, in the southern part of the Ozarks, and has a community of believers, and is a homesteader, and served in the military. I think he was a communications officer. Can't remember, but super great guy. Great content, great motivational content, and he has a lot of great videos. The algorithm has kind of made his life kind of miserable because he doesn't apply his filter very much. And so you may have to search a little bit to find it, but some really great content. An American Homestead is another great show. The early days of An American Homestead were the best, and I think the video quality was just fantastic, and the skills that were taught were fantastic. Some of it has moved to more of motivational speaking and philosophy of homesteading, philosophy of living, Christian philosophy, those kind of things. So you may want to, again, go back to the early days, the first few seasons, where they talk about, how to, process a rabbit or a deer or a cow or a sheep or whatever, and just different things that are just really, how to build a homestead, how to set it up, how to do hydroponics, how to do solar power, how to have a compost toilet, just a lot of just different great, real basic, kind of hardcore homesteading skills on there. And, throughout the show, kind of what do they call it whenever you tell the plot before somebody gets to watch it? I can't think of the big terms today, but his wife passes away around season 4 or 5, and that's kind of tragic, and so you kind of walk through that with them, with their family. But a really good channel. Kind of in terms of finance, couple great things. More in the centralized finance world, Stocks with Josh is really great. It's not just a channel about stocks at all. It's a channel about the markets and understanding the economy, just such as it is. And a lot of great information, a lot of very accurate information, and there's just a lot of kind of scammy, like well-wishing, like people that talk about stocks have no idea what they're talking about. He's one of the few that he's a believer. He's honest, and he doesn't hype things, and he's generally pretty accurate. So if you're interested in investing and trading, particularly in the centralized world, he's really great with that. He does also talk about crypto some. For those of you who are moving away from the old fake fiat dollar system and are moving towards the newer decentralized finance, fair, honest, open decentralized currencies, then Cryptos R Us is a great channel, especially for the beginner, to kind of get you thinking and understanding what decentralized finance is, and just kind of understanding some of the basics. You definitely want to dive in deeper if you go the mining route or if you just go the investing route. That will depend on who you listen to. But Cryptos R Us is a huge channel, very popular. I believe that actually George, he starts every video by saying, "Hello, I'm George. We're all George." Kind of alluding to the old 1984 movie. But he is actually going to be featured on Insights coming up. I think it's today or tomorrow, and it's kind of becoming, his little YouTuber channel is leading to global fame, I think. So, but because he's just so great at it, he understands decentralized finance, he understands the future and how things are trending and moving, and the legal implications of a lot of the things that are happening with the Federal Reserve and in Congress. And so, really fascinating channel. So those are, let's see, did I cover everything? Yeah, those are my favorite ones. I mean, I subscribe to about 70 different channels, so I'm kind of definitely taking in some YouTube information. So there's a lot of great channels, but if you ask me, what are my favorite ones, those are, I don't know if that's all my favorites, but that is definitely some of my favorite ones. So maybe those appeal to you, maybe they don't, maybe you don't even care, that's fine. You're probably still not listening to this video if you don't care, and that's okay. So let's take just a moment now and let's kind of pull all the pieces of information that we've kind of set out there. Let's think about our Bible story through the scriptures, how it teaches us, and let's try to bring kind of a lot of this stuff together and kind of put together a plan of action moving forward. So I think what I've learned, what I understand from not only from Joseph's story but from other stories in the scriptures, is that we cannot presume or assume that there's this kind of brand of Christianity called prosperity theology, where if you just pray enough or do enough good deeds, that God's just going to protect you from calamity. And I hope you'll go back and watch some of our previous Porch Talks this season, because we talked about depression and anger and how to go through those times from a mental and emotional stance, because it is not, no matter how hard things are in our life, that we can still have joy in spite of those struggles and those difficulties. So I want to encourage you to have the right mindset, and that's really the beginning point. You've got to have the right mindset if you're going to go through the storms of life with joy and not sorrow and sadness. The next thing is that we have to be proactive rather than reactive when those things in our life happen. And so today we've kind of discussed, as we looked at the 3 steps of preparedness, the 3 stages of preparedness, we have looked at how to move on when those things strike us, having been prepared for them. Now, can you prepare for everything that happens? Absolutely not. I've been on this journey and my family has been on this journey, and several other families in our church that have been on this journey with us for some time, over a decade, and in no way prepared for everything. not even close. So it is definitely a long-term. It's a marathon and not a sprint. There are times of sprinting, but it is definitely a marathon. So what I would say is you need to pace yourself. You need to just take the first steps. If you set out to be a carpenter, or if you set out to be an attorney or a doctor, or you set out to be in the ministry, you don't just wake up the next day and start performing open heart surgery on people. For one, you're going to have a hard time finding people that are willing to let you do that with no training. Just like, this is what I want to do. So you've got to you need to get some great books and watch some of our previous shows to kind of know which books. But there are some great books out there about homesteading, especially from a Christian perspective. Not that all Christians are homesteaders, but I think because the biblical imperative is so clear, that many homesteaders are believers, and so there's a reason for that. And perhaps it is even because, and I will kind of go out on a limb here a little bit, that the Lord has put it on the hearts of many believers to begin to prepare for what is coming. That something very significant is coming in our lifetime, or if not in our lifetime, the lifetime of our children and grandchildren, that we need to begin to put into place a lifestyle and a legacy that prepares our families for what is coming. And so I certainly believe that. I would be honest to just say, yeah, I do believe that, and I believe the Lord's put it on my heart, and He set me towards this journey. And so part of my ministry is to help others also understand and know what perhaps is coming. And so what would be some great first steps? So let me speak to those of you, if you are already on this journey, I think you probably have somewhat of a good idea, and this is just a refresher today and kind of an assessment of where you are. So let me talk to those of you who are having trouble getting started. And maybe you're just generally not a great self-starter. Maybe you just, you just kind of, it's just like life is just kind of living you instead of you living your life. And you're just having a hard time making that first step. The first step is having an emergency fund, right? Let's talk about why that is. First reason is one of the failures to launch that comes up in our lives is that we can't launch because we have so much debt and financial burden that there is no room for anything else, that we're just basically slaves to the economic condition of our time. So you have got to get out of debt. And I'm not a big Dave Ramsey fan, but he is really good with helping you get out of debt. So go check that out. Or check out Crown Financial Ministries, which I think is better, but a lot of people know the name Dave Ramsey. And he will help you. Maybe beyond that, don't listen to him for investing advice, because over the last period, it has not been very good. And he has not had very good results with that. But as far as getting out of debt, I think he's absolutely outstanding, really, really good stuff. But you've got to sort that out. If you're crushed under the weight of debt, you are under a yoke of slavery to the dollar and to your debtor. So you gotta sort that out, rein that in, get that under control. Especially if it's high interest rate debt, it is just crushing you. You're going to have a hard time. But if you have an emergency fund, one of the ways that helps you get out of debt is so that when you have a problem, you're not going to debt for the solution, which is what statistically most Americans do. If they can't pay for it, they just put it on a credit card. You need to have the mindset, if you don't have the money, you're just not doing it, period. And I know that, golly, that just flies in the face of everything the world says. But the truth is, if you want to be financially free and financially independent, you can't be a slave to debt. If you want to be out of the prison, you can't commit a crime and then go be in the jail. That's just hopefully common sense, but common sense isn't very common. So you've got to get that reined in. So have an emergency fund. That is definitely step one. You've got to accumulate supplies, and your emergency fund really, used to, when I would talk about it, I would talk about you need this dollar amount, but because the dollar is declining so fast, it's not even a store of value anymore. So you need to have food, you need to have your beans, bullets, and Band-Aids, and you need to have something better, something like gold or silver, something like Bitcoin or Ethereum, or stable coins, or something that has a chance of not getting inflated to, it's kind of like Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. It's like Honey, I Shrunk the Dollar, and now when $3 would feed you lunch at a great soup, salad, and breadsticks at Olive Garden, now $3 won't even buy you a trash burger at Whataburger. So and I'm not saying their burgers are trashy, but fast food burgers tend to be not really have any beef. It's all like soy and chemicals, and I don't even think I want to know what's in it. But it's just like, man, I'm sure the algorithm's I've been trash talking a lot on this this episode. I'm sure the algorithm is going to punish me in some way. So make sure and have that. You've got to have your emergency fund. Don't do any of the other things until you have an emergency fund. I know that sounds boring and uninteresting and like, don't care. But I promise you, it is definitely the key to success moving forward. Right? Once you have your emergency fund, you've got some preparations, you've got the ability to sustain a minor event. You've got to make that hard step. You've got to learn skills. And for me, honestly, in this process, skills has been the worst part, the hardest part. Having to learn how to build stuff, having to learn how to repair stuff, having to learn some medical skills, having to learn, just basic gardening, basic growing and raising livestock. Oh my goodness, guys, it's a path. I wish they taught that in school. I wish they get rid of English and a bunch of other stuff, and they would teach agriculture and how to do basic construction and how to repair things and how to cook and I mean, just so many things have just been lost because all we care about is liberal arts, it seems like. And yeah, I mean, I think writing and math and all that is really important. And history is very important, and it's still being taught mostly, so that's great. But man, we've got to do better, and I think that's why a lot of people have moved on to homeschool, because they don't agree with the balance of what's being taught. But wherever you are, regardless of whether you learn those things in school or if you're a younger person and you're still in school and you're watching this, that doesn't matter. You can't blame public schools or homeschool or private school or whatever, the government, the church, whoever you want to blame. It's none of those people's fault. It's your responsibility. You are responsible for your own education, period, the end. You are responsible for your child's education, period, the end, so on and so forth. So that's what you've got to get that right, and you've got to just put in the hard time. And you can't just spend you probably don't have a lot of free time if you're like me and like most people. So you just got to say, I'm going to spend 30 minutes a day, or I'm going to spend 1 hour a day, and I'm going to work on this. And as a family, what greater legacy could you leave for your kids? Just having a 30-minute a day family meeting and just say, guys, this is the path we're on, this is the goal, this is the journey. And we need to learn certain skills. And maybe you assign, if your kids are still younger, maybe you assign one kid, I want you to learn medical stuff. And another kid, I want you to learn how to grow and raise livestock. And another kid, I want you to learn, and of course, if you're like me, we raised 5. So there's lots of kids around to learn things. But, maybe you don't have any kids, or you just have 1 or 2. And that's fine. Just whatever. Maybe you live by yourself. You're just a single person. That's okay. You just start learning things. And maybe get in a group or get together with a few other families and people. If you're really dedicated and focused, we kind of have an inner circle of families that are committed to this task, and we would maybe let you in after we kind of made sure you're really serious about it, kind of into the inner circle a little bit, and we can help each other and kind of help pass on some things. And I'm glad to help people. I mean, I don't have tons and tons of extra time, but I would definitely be willing if somebody's just really struggling to find some resources on raising livestock, or how to install solar, or how to be involved in decentralized finance. I would be glad to sit down with you and at least point you in the right direction and get you on the right path to success. So those would be some good starting places. And today, I hope that you are encouraged and not discouraged. Maybe you've just completely failed at all these things, and you're just realizing, like, wow, I've got to do better in this. And that's okay. There's no condemnation. There's no judgment. There is only, hey, that's okay. Here's the truth. Now you have the truth. Go run with it. Change the things in your life that need to be changed so that you can thrive, not just survive, but thrive when times of calamity come into either your life or to us as believers, or even to our American culture. Well, I hope this information has been helpful. Tune in next week. This will be the end, kind of the mid-season finale. We're going to have a very special guest on the show, somebody that you are going to find out some things about that maybe you didn't know, and it's going to be really good. I'm going to keep it as a surprise as to who's going to be on the show. I think it's going to be really great. One of my favorite people on the planet Earth. So really looking forward to that. I invite you to come and join us next Thursday at 4 p.m. Then we'll take a week off, the week of spring break, whenever Ozark Schools has their spring break. And then we'll come back for the second half of this season of Porch Talk. Wish everybody a blessed week and day. Looks like it's going to be rainy and cloudy and stormy and icy for the next few weeks, but don't worry, spring is coming, and it's going to be a great year. And the Lord is at work, and His fingerprints are all over the things around you if we'll just look and be able to see those things. So be blessed. Have a great week. We'll see you guys soon.